All right, here we go. Welcome into Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin, doing a midweek episode, which is a little different. Usually we don't do these, but I figured this is a good time to maybe fire one up as Iowa hopes to be on fire this Saturday against a very explosive and efficient team in Indiana, 11th ranked, coming into Kinnick Stadium. Talked briefly about this game on the last episode, but it was mainly the Rutgers game. And I just thought, man, like, I'm going to get back on the mic, talk a little bit more about this game, how I feel about this game, and go from there, because it is going to be a very, very challenging game. But I think as us Iowa fans, regardless of what the score ends up being, right? Because I do think that there is a chance that we might get blown out, that we are, number one, desperate to get a ranked win. I mean, we are, 10 straight. But I think Kinnick, right? Like the Kinnick crowd, we are desperate to see a ranked team come into Kinnick. And hopefully we can do the deal. But it's been since 2022, October 1st, against Michigan, who was 4th ranked at the time. And I thought we put up a pretty good fight that game. Our offense was obviously atrocious with Spencer Petras. We lost 27-14. Kind of a boring-ish game, because I think we our 7 points came like in the last minute when Michigan wasn't even trying. So it was really a 27-7 game. But that was our last ranked game inside Kinnick Stadium. I mean, almost 3 years ago, which is crazy. And to think that this year we are going to get at least 3 inside Kinnick, and this is the first one. And this is why this game, in my opinion, is so huge, because it can set things up so great for this Iowa team, especially when you consider after this game, we got a bye week, then you play at Wisconsin, and then, oh, by the way, another huge game inside Kinnick Stadium against Penn State. So massive, massive game this weekend. I'll be there. I'm super excited. I talked about this on the last show, that myself and everybody that's going to be inside Kinnick Stadium needs to be prepared to be loud and to be in the game. Those first 2 weeks, I thought the atmosphere was great, but let's face it, it's Albany, UMass. It's really hard to get into those games. Especially on defense. I mean, and then when your offense is, not doing so good, like the Albany game, it's really hard to get into the game. This game, every single time Indiana has the ball, unless we're down by a lot, if it's a close game, every single down, we have to be into it. Not just on third downs, not just when they're close to the north end zone or the south end zone. No, it needs to be every single down. And so I'm prepared to lose my voice, because I am going to be into this game, because I feel like this is probably Iowa's. I mean, when you look at everything down the list and you factor in everything, Indiana's clearly the better team. And so what is one thing that we have that they don't have? And that is the 12th man. That is Kinnick Stadium. That is them coming into an environment that they have not experienced yet this year. They have not experienced an away game, right? They have not played on the road yet. They've played 4 straight home games. Will they be battle tested a little bit? What if that first couple drives, and I hope like hell this happens, where we actually come out kind of fast, where, we do some things. Like, how are they going to respond inside Kinnick? Because they have not yet had to do that this year, right? Every single game was a blowout. It's the first game, it was actually a little bit closer, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but they never had to worry. I mean, they've never had to show adversity this year. It's been easy going for them. And so what's it going to be like coming into Kinnick Stadium? And Curt Cinetti, I don't think he's ever played at or coached inside Kinnick before. I'm sure a lot of these players have never played inside Kinnick. You look at like Fernando Mendoza, their quarterback, he played at Cal, where, I mean, you go back to last year, I'm sure a lot of the environments that he played in was nothing like Kinnick Stadium. So that is our one advantage going into this game. So how do I feel about this game? As I'm saying here tonight on Wednesday night, how do I feel about this game? I don't feel very good. I really do think that it's going to take a lot for Iowa to get the upset. I think we have to play great at all 3 phases. We can't make mistakes. We can't come out slow. We can't have the offense be handcuffed. And, because all those things are going to contribute to a loss. And this is one of those games where not only am I worried that we're going to lose, but it's a game where I worry that we might get blown out. Like, it's not just we lose, but we get blown out. I mean, there is a side of me where I could see that happening because Cignetti, he does not let the foot off the gas pedal. He does not give a flying fuck. He just keeps going. And unlike most coaches where if something's working, they kind of go away from it for whatever reason. No, Kurt just keeps doing it. He keeps doing it. Like I said, Cignetti could care less. He's just going to keep doing it. If they're up 14-0, for example, he's not just going to shy away from that and just start playing conservative, No, he is going to keep attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking some more. And that's why if there's ever a game for not only for Iowa to lose, but to potentially get blown out, it's a game like this because of who their head coach is, because he just doesn't give a crap. He's just going to keep doing it. If it works, he is going to keep doing it. Time in and time out. It doesn't matter. That's why it's so critical that Iowa doesn't start out and, in the first 5 to 10 minutes of the first quarter where all of a sudden we are down 14-0 or we're down 17-0 or 14-3, because it could be a very long day. Because do you feel confident that, let's say we are down 14-0, do you feel confident that Iowa will come back against this team? Hell no. And if it's flip side, like let's say we come out firing and we're up 14-0, do you feel confident that we're going to maintain that lead? No, because it's Indiana and because we have Kirk Ferentz, who love Kirk, but let's face it, when we get a lead, he starts playing super conservative, no matter the opponent. And that's where I fear that. But with that being said, that doesn't mean that I think that, I'm giving Iowa no chance. That doesn't mean I'm going into this game, because frankly, why would I even step foot in Kinnick Stadium if I didn't have some sort of belief that, hey, maybe we can pull the upset. Maybe we can do it today. Maybe we can finally win that ranked game that we're all desperately wanting. Because there is a small part of me that thinks that we can do it. Like, you just got to play really good to do it, and we got to have the crowd into it and get them rattled. And you never know. So let's look at this Indiana team a little bit in their first 4 games. So their first game against Old Dominion, they actually didn't look that good. And I think they might have actually dropped in the rankings because of this game. Old Dominion actually put up 218 rushing yards, and they averaged 9.5 yards per rush. So whatever they did, granted, it's that first game. You saw what Iowa against Albany. You never know what you're going to get that first game with teams. It's such a hit or miss. You're either going to blow out these bad teams or you just come in flat-footed. And I think maybe Indiana just kind of came out flat-footed, just did not play very well. But Indiana still put up over 500 yards of offense. They just only scored 27 points. And so, is that an area where, okay, Indiana coming into Kinnick, they might put up the yards, but can we hold them to field goals? Can we hold them to mistakes? Bend but don't break, where even if they put up 500 yards, but they only score 27 points. Because if you told me that right now, that they only scored 27 points against us, still not feeling great, given our offense, even the last week obviously looked a lot better, but consistently, you can't really trust Iowa's offense that much until we start seeing it more times than not. But you're at least feeling better about that if you told me right now that they only scored 27 points, because, you would like to think that Iowa can put up something in the 20s, and that's a really close game. And I just want this game to get to the fourth quarter. Let's just say that. I want this game to get to the fourth quarter where we're still all into it, right? Because the last thing you want is getting to the fourth quarter and we're already down by a couple scores. The crowd's not going to be into it. So get it to a fourth quarter. But anyways, I was kind of getting sidetracked there. So yeah, Old Dominion, I thought put up a really good fight, 27-14. And then it was almost kind of like, and I'm sure Cignetti just ripped into their team, because after that game, it's been taking teams to the woodshed each and every game. Kennesaw State the next week, they won 56-9. They had 593 total yards. Kennesaw State had 271 total yards. Their third game against Indiana State, which granted Indiana State really bad team. I mean, I looked at their schedule. They lost to Montana, which I think Montana's a pretty good FCS team, but they lost, I want to say it was like 50 some to 20. So they're not a good team. But Indiana did what they needed to do. They beat them 73-0. Indiana State finished with only 77 total yards, and Indiana had 680 total yards, which is kind of crazy. And I think the biggest thing is Mendoza, their quarterback, 19 for 20. He had one incomplete pass. He had 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And then he carried that into the Illinois game where he went 21 for 23. So in 2 games, he's had only 3 incompletions, and he's had 10 total touchdowns and 0 interceptions in 2 games. And yeah, that game, 63-10, it was pretty much over kind of in the beginning of the second quarter. It was 14-7 after the end of the first quarter. And then Indiana just came out in the second quarter, put up 21 points, and the rest is history. But you look at the total yards that game, Indiana had close to 600 total yards against an Illinois team. Now, granted, Illinois' defense, they were without one of their better secondary players, and then they had another secondary player early in the game that got ejected for targeting. And I think they maybe had another guy that was out. So they were definitely shorthanded a little bit, but still, that is super impressive by Indiana to do what they did. And then you look at Illinois' just rushing yards. They finished with only 2 yards rushing. Now, granted, because college football, which I hate that they do this, they take into account sacks as rushing yards. And so Luke Altmaier had, I don't even know how, I think there was at least 7 total sacks that game. And so he had minus 27 yards rushing. And so that obviously brought it down, but still, their top running back, 5 carries, 18 yards. Their other running back, 6 carries, 11 yards. So still really, really bad. Not good at all. But they just really didn't run the football a lot. But given the score, they really couldn't run the football, right? Because when it's before too long, it's 35-7 in the second quarter. Yeah, you got to have to stop running the football because, at that point, all you can do is pass. And I think that was the big problem with Illinois with that game is they got down so quickly that they had to go into obvious passing situations. And then Indiana, they could just dial up the blitzes and they know it's passing. They're going to be passing the football. They don't have to worry about the run. And at that point, you're so far behind schedule that it's just impossible to do anything. And that's really the reason why I feel like Indiana's defense looked as good as they did. I still think Indiana's defense is really good. They have a stud linebacker. They have a really, really good defensive lineman. Like they are a great defense, but I do think it got to that point in that game, and credit to Indiana to get to that point where Illinois, all they could do is just pass the football because they were down by so much. It makes it so much easier for the defense. It really does. You have to take that into account. That doesn't mean I don't think Indiana's defense isn't good. I do think it's really good, and it's going to be a way bigger step compared to Rutgers' defense. I talked about that in the last podcast where, yes, Iowa's offense looked way better. Mark looked way better, but we have to also keep in mind the team that we were playing, their defense wasn't very good. Keys to the game. What does Iowa need to do to win this game? I think the obvious answers is, you got to limit the mistakes, right? Mark Gronowski's had 1 turnover, and it's because a wide receiver slipped. So can that continue? No fumbles, no interceptions, nothing stupid, no blocked punts, right? No, even though Caden Weegens looked really good, nothing like he did against the Iowa State game, like none of that where he takes a punt at the 5-yard line and, just something stupid. Like you just can't let that happen. So limit the mistakes. You got to obviously all 3 phases, be good, be physical. But I think the biggest thing like offensively is we got to stay ahead of schedule where once again, going back to what I just said a little bit ago, where Illinois had to go to just obvious passing situations, plays. Iowa's just got to do what they got to do. And that involves being able to run your offense efficiently. And, kind of like the Rutgers game where you're doing everything that you kind of want to do. You're mixing in the play action. You're doing the jet motions. You're getting, quarterback run plays where you're doing like an option with Mark Gronowski and you're taking a few shots down the field, like things like that, right? Where it keeps Indiana's defense guessing a little bit. you don't want to get to the point where it's just so obvious what we're doing, because it's just going to get so much easier for Indiana to do what they want to do. And frankly, Mark looked way better against Rutgers. Way, 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 way better. But I think he needs to look even better this game if we want to win. And what I mean by that is you go back to that Rutgers game, there was 3 plays in particular that you do that against Indiana, we're not winning the game. And that was the first drive of the game. After I rewatched the footage, it was even more obvious that if he just threw the ball better to Seth Anderson, that could have been a 70-yard touchdown if he would have hit him in stride. But he underthrew him. I still think it should have been a pass interference, but it wasn't. But like you gotta not over, or you can't underthrow him there. You got to hit him in stride. And then the 3rd down and 3 when he had DJ Vanami wide open for a first down right before half, you got to connect on that. I mean, he was wide open. And then the worst one was the obvious touchdown pass to Orthworth. I mean, literally wide open. And he that was a really bad throw. And thank God he redeemed himself the following drive. But those are 3 plays that he just needs to connect on. And then there's a guy on Twitter, forgot his name, but I don't know where he gets this footage from, but he gets footage where it's a different camera angle. It's almost like the camera angle that they watch when they watch film, where it's more of the field where you can see way more. And he puts up like a kind of like a thread on Twitter with a bunch of different videos. And when you rewatch that, Mark's game that day, you could maybe slide him a little bit less, right? Like, so like, you know, if you had him at like, let's say you had him at an 8 out of 10 for that game, after watching some of those videos on Twitter, I'd maybe go down to like a 7 or 7.5, because there were plays where he had guys open and he just doesn't throw them the football. And this has kind of been a trend with Mark where, or he waits too long to throw it. I mean, there was one to Sam Phillips where he threw it to Sam and he completed the pass. It was a nice throw. You know, Sam caught it, turned up field for maybe another 5-10 yards, but he had him open way earlier where he should have thrown him the ball way earlier. He sometimes holds the ball too long. And then sometimes he just frankly doesn't throw them the ball at all. And they're open, like they're wide open. That is something, you know, going into this game, when you're talking keys to the game, he's got to make those throws. He can't be hesitant. He can't be scared that he might make a mistake. No, you just got to do it. I mean, this is a game where you got to do it. We cannot go into this game, and I don't think we will. I really don't, because I think Kirk realizes how much firepower Indiana has, where you cannot be conservative this game. You cannot handcuff the offense. You have to be like you did against Ohio State 2017, where you were just ultra aggressive every single drive, no matter what. That is what we need to do offensively. Just come out firing at all cylinders, not trying to play conservative where it's run, pass, punt, run, pass, punt, like we did against the Iowa State game. No, you know, I want to see like that first drive, like we did it at Rutgers, where that first drive, 2 out of the 3 plays were deep shots. And unfortunately, we didn't connect. One of them should have been a better throw. The other one, Sam Phillips should have just caught it. Those are plays that you got to do, and you got to do that early in the game. You can't wait until the 2nd or 3rd quarter, where potentially you might already be down by, you know, 2 or 1 or 2 touchdowns. No, you got to do it like early in the game. And then defensively, I mean, it's as simple as this. The defensive line needs to play like what Phil Steele thought, which, and don't get me wrong, defensive line, they've been fine. There's been moments where it's been kind of annoying, but they've been fine. But Phil Steele had this defensive line as the best unit in the Big Ten. They got to play like that this weekend, and some. They got to get pressure. Now, the problem is Indiana gets the ball out very quickly, and so it's one of those things where it's really hard to apply pressure because they throw the ball so quick, and they utilize the RPOs and things like that. But the defensive line just they need to play their best football this weekend, because if they do, I think at least one thing happens. It stops their run game. And that's something where everybody just talks about the passing for Indiana. Well, their rushing attack is really, really good too. I mean, against Illinois, they had 312 yards against a Big Ten team. 312 yards. And then their other 3 games, they put up like 300 yards against Old Dominion. And I mean, they are a good running football team as well. Well, if our defensive line plays like the best unit in the Big Ten, according to Phil Steele, then we should limit their running attack. And if you can do that and keep them just kind of one-dimensional, that is at least better. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to stop them, but that helps, right? That helps. Last, you talk special teams because I think it's something that a lot of people don't bring up, but it's so obviously so critical. Can Caden Weegan continue to do what he has done the last 2 games? Because if he can, those all-purpose yards, those yards that kind of go hidden on the stat sheet, is going to set us up big time this game. And can Drew Stevens knock down his field goals? He's been inconsistent this year. Reese Dakin, he's been inconsistent punting the football. He needs to have a big game this weekend because, you're talking, it's so critical for Indiana to start at the 10-yard line versus the 40-yard line, right? Where they have to go the length of the field. And so Reese Dakin, he's been inconsistent. Can he have a great game? And, anything is possible. And then really the last thing I'm just going to say here too, and then we'll end it here, is Iowa needs to win the time of possession. And that's why it's so critical that Iowa can get their running attack going, both with, Kamari, but then also with Mark Gronowski, where you're sustaining drives and you're letting the clock bleed, because that's only good for Iowa, because then that's less time that Indiana's offense is out on the field. And so if Iowa can win the time of possession, like, how cool would it be if Iowa had a drive like they did against Iowa State, against this Indiana team, where they took like 9 minutes off the clock? Now, yes, they didn't score that drive. I don't even know did we end up even scoring a field goal? I don't even know. I have to go back. But if you tell me right now that we have a drive that takes up 8 to 9 minutes and we actually score on that drive, I mean, that is way in our favor at that point. Those are kind of what I think needs to happen for us to win the game. Now, I will give my prediction. This is kind of weird because, once again, we used to do podcasts during the middle of the week and always give our predictions. This is our first time I've done a midweek podcast, and probably won't do many of these. Maybe, just kind of depends. I just thought this was a great time to do it because we have such a big game this weekend. But I do think ultimately Indiana will win this game. I think Iowa will keep it close in the first half for the most part. I think the crowd will be into it. I think we'll have some really good moments. But I just think Indiana, they're going to carry that momentum in from the Illinois game. I do like the spot that we're in, given the fact that, what they did against Illinois. And I said on the last episode, college football is weird. Week by week, anything can change. Just like in the NFL. I mean, look at the Packers. They look unstoppable the first 2 weeks, and they go and play at the Browns and they look like shit. Anything can happen. But I just think that they're just very hot right now, right? And they're going to carry that momentum into this game. And I just think in the second half, they're going to make some plays, going to connect on some deep shots. They're going to connect on some big play moments. And I think ultimately they will win this game. And I'm not really going to even give a score. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I could see it being a blowout. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping if we do lose, it's only by, a touchdown or maybe 10 points. Because at that point, if we put up a fight against this team, right, and we look decent, yes, even if we lose, it'll sting, it will suck, but I don't think it's the end of the world either. So yeah, I do think it's a loss. I hope I'm dead wrong. I hope we come out and somehow win this game, because once again, if we did find a way to win, you're talking what a huge win going into the bye week. But all right, well, that will do it for this episode. We will be back on Sunday going over this game. Hopefully all good news. Hopefully I'm dead wrong on my prediction and we get the win. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Thank you guys all for listening, and go Hawks.